Okay, we're back to the fatal fun. Buddy, have you been there this whole time being a good boy in the camera? Because you're a good boy. What are you doing? What are you doing? Got a little fly right there. All right. So, back to I talked about the fatal funnel. If you didn't hear, we talked about the Sacramento thing. So what happened is the cops plan to come in the front door on this Good Guys incident. If you search Good Guys Sacramento shooting, I'm sure there's videos out there that show the shooting because it was all over the news and it wasn't good. It's like I said, Sac Sheriff took some heat, but you know what? They're my brothers and I thought they did a great job. So the problem with having multiple entry points is if you're working with someone and you're going in a building, a kind of general rule of thumb when we did search warrants or arrest warrants, parole searches, whatever we were doing, if we were doing some sort of hard entry or clearing of a house and shots were fired, it was standard operating procedure. If you're inside, stay inside. If you're outside, stay outside. Now the natural instinct is you're outside on a perimeter, and a perimeter would be if this is the house, you have a guy here. If I have one guy here, I can watch anybody escaping this way, and I can see anybody escaping this way. I put another guy on that corner, he can see anybody escaping on his two angles, therefore we've squared the building down and we've kind of locked it down with two people. That's one way to put up a perimeter around a building. That's considered an outer perimeter or outside perimeter. The guys entering, that would be the inner perimeter, they're clearing inside. If there's shots fired inside, instinct is for the guys on the outside to run in and help. See who got shot, make sure if their guy's down, they can return fire in case the bad guy's beating up his guy. They don't know what's going on. Well, you don't want to do that because in the heat of the battle, when people start kicking in doors, you don't know if it's a bad guy kicking in a closet door. You don't know who's coming in. So when there's shots fired, ideally, and it never worked out this way, every time I was at a place and something went down, the outside guys would come in screaming, scare the shit out of us. We'd point guns at each other, go, shit, you were supposed to be outside, man, fuck you, and we'd go back to business. But it just instinctual, when you hear shots fired, you got to go in. So that's the problem with having a plan to where you have guys entering on the inside. When those guys in the back of the Good Guys entered through that wall and they blew a hole and they were going to enter, the problem was the guys in the front couldn't come in right away. The guys in the front were supposed to wait in case the guys flushed out because the only way out of that place was that front door, which created a fatal funnel for the cops. So the cops were watching the front door. They shot a bad guy. The other bad guy started shooting hostages. They blew the back wall and came in. They engaged a couple targets. There was an exchange of gunfire and then there was this pause. And I don't know what happened, whether it was radio. I didn't read the after-action report on that, so I don't remember what happened and what all good and bad was, but anyway, there was a pause. So finally, some hostages jumped through the windows and started running away, and some cops were grabbing them. And as the cops went up and grabbed them, they did a visual assessment inside and went, shit, I can probably go in. There's no one here, there's no cops clearing, I can get in. So then cops start entering the front door. When you have people entering in two different entryways, it creates a bad situation. That's why you need good markings on cops. That's why cops, you know, uniform cops, they kind of always have the right of way, so to speak, at a high-risk incident. If a uniform shows up and he starts saying something, he's in uniform, everybody knows he's the cop. So until he controls the scene, he pretty much takes over in uniform until he identifies all the other guys. Now, obviously, if he knows this and we've worked together and we're in the same area, but I mean, you know, I was working in Sacramento and we were doing arrest warrants down in LA, shooting Newton area and all these other districts. Nobody knew us. We'd show up with our little uniform on and say, hey, we're going to this area for a warrant. You got a cop that can come help us? And they go, no, we're busy, you're on your own. And we're like, okay, can we have a radio? They go, no, dial 911. We go, fuck you. So, I mean, LA cops, they don't like other cops coming in their area. But anyway, so we just go do our shit, and if we got in trouble, we just had an open line. What we did is we called dispatch, put our phone on, hung on our thing, and then we had an open line to dispatch. So if we got in a jam, we had dispatch call LAPD dispatch to get us cover. But I digress. Anyway, different incidents, when you have multiple entry points, it creates problems. So if you're trying to clear an area, or you think somebody's in your house and you've got a friend who wants to help you, or you got a couple of neighbors, they're going to clear your house, you don't want to make, okay, you go in the front door, I'll go in the back door, okay, and that side door, you go in that door. Because all three of you come in, and that's going to create lag time. When you see each other, You're going to stop looking for a bad guy. You're going to assess, okay, that's one of my friends. Now I'm going to go back looking. All that time, the bad guy can be sitting somewhere and taking pot shots at you. So threat assessment or enemy assessment or target assessment, there's a lot of different terms out there. If you have multiple targets, the rule of thumb is you want to take the person out that's the most threat. Now that sounds like a pretty easy term. Who's the most threat? Well, you know, some people say it's the guy with the biggest gun. Some people say it's the guy who can shoot the fastest. If there's an automatic and a semi-automatic, it's the guy with the automatic. If it's a guy with a bazooka and a pistol, it's the guy with the bazooka. If it's a guy with two pistols, then if one's got a 22 and one's got a 45, then the 45 is the biggest threat. Well, to me, that's a little silly to try and figure out what gun is what. Okay, I'm a firm believer, if I'm in a threatened situation, I'm taking out target's opportunity. The first target I can get a round off, I'm taking that target down, and then I'm assessing my other target. Now, in competitions and things, a lot of times they'll have multiple targets and they'll rate you on, you know, put 2 targets on the closest, put 2 targets on a 7, then 2 on a 3. Simulating that 7 was more of a threat than the 3. So you have to go in there, it makes you think, it creates lag time. I have to find a 7, put 2 rounds in it, then go find a 3 to it. Now I may find a 3 first, and I have to leave it. To me, that's what I call negative training. I don't like negative training. I don't like doing things counter. I would never turn away from a guy with a gun because he had a pistol that I could have engaged in order to go with a guy for a rifle and leave this guy with a pistol. Now, there's a lot of tactical guys out there that argue with me and say, well, you're wrong. Because you can take a shot from a pistol, and if you take a shot from a rifle, he's going to drop you and he may not. So you should take the rifle first. And that's okay. A tactic is one of those things, survival, the more you do it, the more you get experience at it, the more you have toolboxes, the quicker you assess things and you find out what works. And you know what? Even if you think it works, it may not work one time and then you pay. And that's kind of a theory when cops work with bad guys is we kind of got to be on our game all the time because one mistake by us can cost us our life. Whereas the bad guys, they can make mistakes all the time because we're not just out there kind of hunting and nilly-nilly and you know, we're just not doing a bunch of things that bad guys can do. Bad guys aren't worried about violating policy. They're not worried about going to court for a civil suit. They're not worried about getting sued. They're not worried about losing their job. They're not worried about morally, is that the right thing to do? Can I live knowing I killed an innocent person? They don't know any of that because I ain't got no morals in the dirt bags anyway. So they have none of those factors to figure in when they're out there shooting at cops. Whereas cops, when we draw our gun, we have to visualize, okay, is this legal? Am I within policy? Can I justify this? Do I have the right to use force? What's the policy? What's the legal law? Should I engage? What's my background? Oh crap, there's maybe a kid back there. Oh, there's a house. I don't want to shoot through and shoot somebody in a bedroom. All that creates lag time. That lag time creates cops to hesitate more, which creates cops to be doing the shooting and running and the shooting and pray and spray and pray, and that's why cops miss a lot. I'm telling you, if you look up the stats, if they give it out to, I don't know if they give it out to civilians, but I know in the military, or in a cop, we got it all the time. And the actual number of hits, shots fired by cops is ridiculous. I want to say it's either 7 or 14%. It's pretty stinking low, the actual time we hit. And we train 10 times more than bad guys. Why? Because bad guys can lie in wait. They can sit and make us hunt for them. We're going after them. We're going after the unknown. They know. They've already got in their head, I'm going to shoot me a cop. I'm going to shoot him when he comes through this door. They have no lag time when they see us to pull that trigger. So when you get into that lag time and the more you go, that's why I like people going to range. That's why I want you to draw this gun. I don't know if you know when I'm drawing this gun. This has got a little clip. If I don't release this gun with this little finger here, this holster doesn't come out. But every time I draw my gun, because I used to carry this, so I'm kind of familiar with it. Sometimes I carry it now, not all the time. But when I carry this holster, it's just natural for me to sweep that little clip there. But if I miss it, my gun doesn't come out. If a bad guy hits me and tries to take my gun, he's going to think the gun's stuck. And then if I can get his hands off, then I can sweep it and get my gun out and shoot. So all these times that you've been seeing me, if you've seen me kind of stall, that means I missed it and I had to re-sweep that. Well, again, that comes from 5,000 times, muscle memory. Developing that non-thinking, getting rid of that lag time, making things instinctual. I don't have to think about sweeping that point at you. I can talk to you about a different topic and still get my gun out and sweep that button and make sure it releases. So, when you're assessing targets, hi chicken. It's okay. Oh well. When you're assessing targets, you need to realize all the factors that go in, all the different things that I'm worried about. Am I in a fatal funnel? Policy, legally. Now, as a civilian, you don't have to worry about, let me check my time here. You don't have to worry about policy so much because your policy is the law. And basically the law in most all states, if you use deadly force, and I'm going to do another video about after you get in a shooting, what happens, because nobody really covers this real well. I don't think they cover it well. The law is basically if you shoot somebody, you have to show fear for your safety or the safety of others. And that's about it in a nutshell. Now, fear is a big word. Justifying it, was the fear normal? Was it reasonable? How they determine reason is they take a person with the same training and experience as you and then would judge that against them. So cops are judged against a different theory than civilians. Since we have more training and we're more competent, we know that's why cops do what I call this justification training. We come up with all these, there's a film out there called 21 Feet, and I'm sure it's on YouTube, I'm not sure. But there's some expert dude that's like Mr. Knife Dude, and he can cover 21 feet in like 3 seconds, and they have a cop walk in there and he can't pull his gun out, and they don't tell him what's going to go on, and they say just contact this guy and talk to him. Well, when this guy comes in, he doesn't have a clue what's going to happen. The bad guy with a knife knows as soon as he gets to this point, I got to rush him as quick as I can, see if I can put a knife on him before he gets his gun out. Well, guess what? He wins every time. So even though he's an expert and he's got all this timing on his side and it's planned and everything's against you, cops do that training to show that if I shoot a guy with a knife at 21 feet, I can testify that I have seen training where a guy got 21 feet and stabbed a guy before he got his gun out. So I don't want to let a suspect get 21 feet with me a knife, because it used to be a guy had a knife, there's no reason to shoot him. If you're this far, why'd you shoot him? Why'd you give him another chance? Well, if you give him a chance, he may cover that ground and shoot you. If you miss, he may cut your throat and you may not get a second shot. So that's what I call kind of justification training. And civilians don't really get justification training. Anytime you see things, like all these black on white crimes now that are out there, the major media didn't cover it, but if you're reading a different media, you're seeing a lot of blacks attacking white people. And they won't call it hate crimes because they're black, but if they were white people attacking black people, it would be a hate crime. Well, to me, that is your justification training. If you went in an area and you had just read 4 articles and there was 4 beatings of 4 black guys that beat up a white guy, and you're a white guy, and you're walking down and you got 4 black guys coming at you, if you end up having to use force on these guys, that is going to be in your mindset on why you use force. Your attorney is going to have to justify, when you use force, why were you fearful? Hell, I was fearful because I was a little guy, they were bigger, there was 4 of them and 1 of me, it was at night, I didn't know if they had guns or not, I didn't know what they wanted, I just read for the last 4 days they had freaking beat up white guys, I'm a white guy and there are 4 black guys, hell yeah, I was scared. That is justification, that comes after a shooting. That's that justification training where a cop gets a guy 21 feet and he has him come up and cut you with a knife. Cops send out little memos about belt buckle guns and phone guns. There's a phone that shoots a little 22, and as soon as that came out, every cop sent it to everybody. And I used to keep I was a firearms instructor, use force instructor, so I kind of had to justify this, because when I taught it and cops got used force, I would testify as an expert saying, this is why they did what they did, and in my training I covered this and blah blah. So if I shot a guy with a cell phone, I could testify that I've seen a video where there's a gun that's a cell phone, and the guy pointed it at me like a gun, he was holding it like a gun, he pointed at me in an aggressive position, I thought it was a gun because of my training and my experience, therefore I shot him. Even though it was a cell phone, it would be justified because my frame of mind was the fear was reasonable. And then they would get me, or expert, to come in and go, did you ever teach this? Have you ever heard this? Yeah, I've heard it. There's been these incidents. There's incidents where a person pulled a phone and it was a distraction when actually his brother or whatever had a gun and shot him. And pulling the phone was only to keep the cop's direction off the guy with the gun. So when a guy points a cell phone at you, it's a high-risk situation. It's escalating a force. He's failing to follow orders. He's putting you in a compromising position. All these things are happening very quickly. And if you're carrying a gun as a civilian, you need, oh, I'm 15 minutes. All right. So when you're assessing targets, you got to use common sense in all your other training. we're going to end that there. We'll get into a few other things. We'll end that there.